Hello and welcome to another episode of Every Horror Movie on Netflix, the show where we watch, review, and discuss every fucking horror movie on Netflix. I'm Patrick, back again this week, as always, with Chris.
Hello.
And Steven.
Greetings.
We are gathered here today for our second James Wan movie in a month's time. We're going to be talking about Insidious Chapter 2. But before we dig into that, as always, we like to do a little catch-up on the horror-related things we've been watching, reading, otherwise consuming. What have you guys been digging into lately?
Not much, frankly. October came and went, and with it, kind of my extraordinary amount of spooky watching. So I don't have that much to report. I did watch the WNUF Halloween special on Halloween.
Oh yeah, what'd you think?
I liked it for the most part. The ending was terrible.
It's bad,
and really. And after a certain point, I'm like, I don't need this many commercials. But
yeah.
Well, am I correct in remembering that some of the commercials do repeat themselves too?
Oh, they do. They do.
Yeah.
And I feel like that was part of the gimmick and part of the shtick. Like the whole premise of the show seemed to be like, okay, here's like, a special, but it's 90% commercials. And I felt that the movie was aware of what we wanted to see and was deliberately just trying to put as many commercials in instead, much like when you're actually watching something on TV.
Right.
But the ending, I did not like at all. Other than that, it was fun.
It's cute. It's a cute movie, right? It's nothing to necessarily write home about, but it's a good mood setter.
I was laughing my ass off for the first 30 to 40 minutes, and then not so much after that.
Yeah, it has its moments, but it felt very like kind of overstuffed to me. I was like, okay, you could cut this down to like 30 minutes, and I would get the same point essentially. But it had its charms.
But that's it.
Wow. I've still been keeping it spooky. Honestly, I have a letterbox now, but only to keep track of what I've watched. I haven't written reviews or anything. And I feel like I could do
you follow me? Do you follow me, Steven?
I should, yeah. I don't think I
Oh,
do
you
currently.
should.
Smash that follow.
How the fuck do you not follow? I'm not going to follow you either.
Oh my
I don't give a
god.
shit. I could do like a whole episode on everything I've watched since Halloween. But instead, I'm only going to mention two things briefly. I watched White of the Eye at the recommendation of our friends over at It Slays. This is a Donald Cammell movie from the 80s. He's famous for... he did the movie Performance. He wrote that, the Mick Jagger movie from the 70s. Fucking crazy movie. It's basically an American interpretation of a giallo set in the desert, and every single shot is beautiful. The camera work is incredible. The dialogue, everything is just full steam ahead bonkers from moment one. So definitely check that out if that sounds like your bag. It's a canon movie too, so that should tell you everything you need to know.
Let me interrupt because the term giallo has been thrown around a lot lately. What does it mean, or what does it mean to you?
It's typically kind of a lurid mystery with a mysterious killer with a knife. In my experience, usually very highly sexualized.
Really eye-popping color palette.
Mm-hmm.
I saw a tweet that was like, and I wish I could attribute the author, but it was like, anytime a horror movie uses a neon light, and it's like the reviewers are like, this is a kaleidoscopic, delirious.
Oh my god, that totally is a thing. That's so funny. The other thing I watched, I don't know if you guys have heard of this. It's a 2020 movie called The Empty Man, and I think I caught this on HBO Max. People keep recommending it to me, and I'm like, well, it sounds like The Bye-Bye Man or Slender Man, like one of those creepypasta things, young kids encountering, a dangerous, evil urban legend figure. And it is that. in places, but it's also a lot more. This is like kind of 5 different movies crammed into one, and I can see why the studio just like didn't even release it to theaters. But it's become kind of a cult hit during the pandemic, especially so it's way too long, right? I'd say it's about 20 minutes too long. And that is because the first 15 to 20 minutes is a self-contained prologue that works as a short film on its own and is really fucking scary. The rest of the movie kind of fails to match that height of dread. But I would say if this sounds even remotely intriguing to you, just watch the first 20 minutes and see what you think. I think you could stop there and skip the rest of the movie and be totally fine. But there was a lot I liked in the movie, and it had some interesting kind of twists that I haven't seen before. So that's The Empty Man. Patrick, what do you got for us?
Well, speaking of Giallo and Giallo-inspired things, I saw Last Night in Soho, Edgar Wright's new film, which I really liked. I feel like I liked it more than the general critical consensus seems to be.
Critics are shitting on that movie, man, but everybody I've talked to says go see it immediately.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I mean, it's definitely him doing a horror film for the first time, which I love to see because I think he's a phenomenally talented director who I fucking love, and it was fun to see him play in that genre. It's surprisingly thematically resonant. I think a pretty effective feminist piece, especially for a movie about female characters written by a man. It felt like a very empathetic, accurate piece, and it fucking looks beautiful. You know, it's a great ride. Really enjoyed that.
I was getting kind of a neon kaleidoscopic Suspiria vibe from the trailer. Can I expect that?
That was exactly what I thought of when Chris brought up the thing about the neon sign, because there is a neon sign in the movie.
And I think that's why I saw that tweet.
Yeah.
But, so maybe this is a spoiler, but is it Last Night in Soho referring to what happened last night, or this is our last night?
It could go either way. Yeah. Yeah.
A little clever.
Yeah. I think it's intended that way. And also, speaking of our good friends at It Slays, y'all should go check out their latest episode, which I guested on. We reviewed Paranormal Activity 1 and 2. If you're a regular Amon listener, you'll know It Slays is a good friend of Amon. And Rowan, their host, has joined us before for the episode where we reviewed every Nightmare on Elm Street movie ever. It was great hanging out with those guys. Great revisiting those movies, especially the original Paranormal Activity, which, as you all know, is one of the movies that terrified me most in the theater ever in my fucking life. So it was really fun, going back to those and seeing how they hold up. So go check out their new episode and give them a follow.
So, all right. We have every horror movie on Netflix available to us, right? So many movies we've never heard of. Why the fuck are we watching another James Wan movie, Patrick?
Well, Chris and
throwing down the gauntlet.
This guy's coming out swinging. Well, I knew he was going to come out swinging because the link to our Zoom meeting is titled "Insnipid Chapter Poo."
Insnipid.
Insipid.
Insipid Chapter 2. Don't make fun of my speech impediment.
Chapter Poo.
Chapter Poo.
Get it right, damn it. Put a lot of hard work into that.
So would you view it, cue it, or screw it, Stephen?
Oh, I don't think that's indicative of my review at all, but I just find it curious that we're watching two kind of big mainstream blockbuster hits in a row.
Yeah, I mean, so this is primarily just inspired because the episode before The Conjuring, Chris mentioned that he had been thinking about choosing Insipid Chapter Poo. And I've been on a James Wan kick lately. I loved this movie when I saw it in the theater. It is also one of the movies that terrified me most in the theater of any movie I've ever seen. And I was like, you know what? Let's keep the James Wan train rolling. As I said last episode, I'm going to do a little bit of Chris's dirty work for him and just cut to the chase. We're going to do it Insidious Chapter 2. That's my story.
Right on.
Well, we reviewed Insidious for Halloween a couple years ago. So
that's right.
Dear listeners, if you have not seen Insidious or listened to that episode, you should probably do that first. I would hate us to walk into this discussion dropping Insidious spoilers for people who haven't seen the first Insidious, because it's one of my all-time favorite horror movies, and it got pretty good reviews around the table last time. So go do that, then come back, and we'll talk Insidious Chapter 2.
Well, it's also kind of a classic episode, right? We've got one of our greatest skits at the beginning of that one.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we put a lot of work into that. That was edited, by the way. That was edited, by the way, in the waiting room of a hospital while my mom was having brain surgery.
Oh my God.
On Halloween Day.
Wow.
If it's Halloween, it must be Saw. Anyway.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, if you have not seen Insidious and don't care if you have spoilers, or if you just need a recap, basically there's a kid played by Ty Simpkins who can astral project into a realm called the Further, which is kind of this purgatory sort of thing where there's lots of spirits of dead people. He gets trapped in the Further in the first movie, right? And his dad, played by Patrick Wilson, has to go in and save him. His dad also has the astral projection ability, but conveniently forgot it because it was erased from his memory by a psychic when he was a little kid.
Yes, because he was being stalked by a woman in a black wedding gown, very creepy woman who would show up in the background of photographs every time they took a picture of him. And so to keep him safe from this woman, they had to train him not to astral project or have him forget his ability. And but then at the end of Insidious, shocking, it turns out that maybe Patrick Wilson came back from the Further. He saved his son for sure, but he seems to be possessed by the woman in black, and he kills his psychic friend, played by Lin Shaye.
Played by iconic queen Lin Shaye.
Yes, and then iconic queen Rose Byrne comes into the room and sees something horrifying on a camera and says, "Oh my God, what's his name? What's his name? Josh. Josh. Oh my God. And he says, "I'm right here, darling," or something like the end of Pet Sematary.
And that's the end of the movie.
Yeah, man, sometimes dead is better, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And so this movie is reckoning now with Josh being possessed by the spirit, seemingly, of this woman who tormented him throughout his childhood. Meanwhile, his mom tries to find out what the fuck is going on and who this person is that haunted him. That's the setup for Insidious Chapter 2.
And good for them, in my book, for actually sticking through the consequences of the kind of the twist ending of Insidious. Yeah. Like, it would be easy to just pretend that never happened, like, a lot of horror movies do, or horror sequels do.
Yeah, you could have that, like, gotcha kind of ending where it's like, it's not over yet, and just sort of abandon that. But this very much continues to play in the same sandbox that the first one set up. And, it feels like there was actually a plan for this movie. Starting from the first movie, it seems like there was at least a rough plan to go into this plot for the second one, which I appreciate.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. Chris, I support what you said, that like I give him points for continuing on the same path and trying to tie up those loose ends, but it makes for a very convoluted movie that also feels like it had like a heavy studio hand in it too. It's like it goes in all the directions I would want it to based on how the first movie ended, but it just feels kind of slapped together.
Well, I read a little bit on Wikipedia about the production of this movie, and I mean, the big thing is James Wan and Leigh Whannell both came back to do it, and I think it seems like there was some question of if they were going to do another one without them or not. And James Wan came back, and because he did Saw obviously, and then kind of handed off the sequels to the studio or Darren Lynn Bousman or what have you. And in this one, he was like, no, I would actually want to come back this time and sort of keep the sequel more in line with my vision or whatever. Although I think it's a very different movie than the first Insidious in ways that I don't really like.
Explain yourself. It did feel different to me, but I couldn't really pin down why.
I can't quite put my finger on it either, but I think the main thing is that Insidious is kind of, it's pretty coherent and well crafted and quite scary, and then it kind of gets crazier at the end. And this movie just kind of takes the crazy vibe from the end of Insidious and puts it over the whole rest of the movie for the most part, I think.
Well, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. I mean, if they just started over again and like tried to reset the tone, I think that would have felt pretty tedious. But it is weird to have a whole movie that's completely off the rails like this.
Right. Like, it seems like they decided, and not wrongfully so, that the point of Insidious is like the further and that kind of weird stuff and that aesthetic, rather than kind of the more straight-laced haunted house stuff that made up most of the first movie.
Yeah, I mean, in the Conjuring episode, we talked about the different sort of degrees of James Wan going batshit and how he modulates that a little bit from film to film, exactly how batshit he's going to go. This is pretty full batshit James Wan. Although I will say it was not quite as crazy as I remembered it being. I remembered it being sort of just bonkers from square one, and the first stretch, maybe first half of it, was a little more chill than what I thought I remembered. But suffice it to say, it certainly hits an absolute fever pitch of insanity by the end.
Do y'all think there's a correlation between how many gigantic, beautifully dressed homes there are in a James Wan movie and how crazy it's going to be? Because I swear there were a dozen houses in this movie and I wanted to live in all of them.
I did have trouble keeping track of which house they were in and whose house it was, because there's like Josh and Renee's house, there's the mom's house, there's Parker Crane's house. Yeah. So I guess there's maybe just three. But it was a little hard to track which one they were in.
They all look the same. It's every James Wan movie has these giant houses with this like Victorian aesthetic and this big ass sitting room right off the door and all this stuff, and the piano room and what have you. And it's like that in Insidious. It's like that in Malignant. It's like that in Chapter 2. It's like that in The Conjuring. It's like that in The Conjuring 2.
They use the word Malignant.
He just loves these floor plans. They
use it twice, right? Because there's like a flashback to that moment too, and they're in the thriller later.
Right. Yeah. I had forgotten that Jocelyn Donahue is in this franchise. Our girl, Amon alum, Jocelyn Donahue, is in this franchise, playing the young Barbara Hershey.
Amon alum from Dead Awake.
Yeah. I had to remind myself. I was like, okay, what total piece of garbage did we see her in?
Yeah.
What did you guys think about I was really thrown off by the young Lin Shaye at the beginning, like using Lin Shaye's voice.
Yeah, using old Lin Shaye's voice. That was very disorienting.
Fun. I like that.
I went into this in a state of total confusion because I can never seem to remember what actually happened in Insidious. And as Chris knows, I forget that I gave it a good review on the show. And I was just like, wait, what? Lin Shaye's in these movies, right? But no, maybe not. Maybe this actress just sounds like her.
No. Well, I was confused. I watched the new director's cut of Rocky IV in the theater this week, and because for the most part the movie's very beholden to whatever they shot for Rocky IV in the first place, so it's not that different. But there is a moment in the fight where Rocky gets knocked down and things kind of slow down, and much like it does in the more recent Rocky movies like Creed and Rocky Balboa, you hear like Rocky's internal monologue where he's like, "Oh, don't be afraid. Stand up. Look him in the eye. Fight him. This is your life.
You're never going to keep me down."
But it's very clearly like 75-year-old Sylvester Stallone doing the voiceover, which is really weird because it doesn't sound anything like Rocky did in the 80s.
Do they try to like modulate his voice at all digitally? Because I know, like, Patrick, do you remember when the Exile on Main Street reissue came out years ago, and there was that song "Plunder My Soul" that we loved, where Mick Jagger, like, it was an unfinished song, and Mick Jagger sang it at like 70 years old, and they like digitally altered his voice to make it sound like it did at the time it was recorded, and it's kind of ghoulish. It doesn't really work.
I didn't know that was the case. I thought that was I thought that was a recording from 1960 whatever.
Well, Chris, wait, hold on a minute. Rocky IV, is that the one with the robot?
Not anymore. They took the robot out.
I was going to ask if there's more robot in the director's cut.
No, there's less robot.
Okay.
Sly fucked up.
Yeah, he did.
But yeah, anyways, Lin Shaye's old voice is coming out of the mouth of the young actress who's playing the young Lin Shaye, and it's very disorienting and an interesting creative choice.
I liked it.
But we get to see the moment where she suppressed Josh's knowledge or memory of his sort of
as a young boy.
projection
As a young boy.
ability. Yeah.
Wait, so was that covered in the first Insidious, that his ability was suppressed, and like now they're just kind of showing us how the sausage got
Yes.
made? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, it's referred to, I think.
We get that iconic title card at the right after that opening prologue.
Love that
Oh, yeah.
title card. Love this dumbass soundtrack where they just drop a piano down the stairs every 2 seconds.
I was going to say,
listen.
every time something scary happens, it's like a piano's falling off the Empire State Building.
Yeah.
It's so bombastic.
I got some news for you on that. The score for Insidious and Insidious Chapter 2 is by Joseph
Bishara.
Oh, you already know.
Oh, who's that?
He already knows.
He played he played a character in the first Insidious, isn't he? Darth
he played
Maul?
like the Darth Maul
Yeah.
villain.
Yeah.
The first
Oh, no
Insidious. Yeah, and he also played Bathsheba in The Conjuring.
Oh wow,
Yeah,
utility player here.
utility
Multi-hyphenate.
player, and he did the soundtrack for Insidious
And Malignant.
Dark Skies, which we just
wow.
watched.
Oh, very memorable score in
Yep.
Dark
He
Sky.
did, he did the score for Malignant. He did the score for The Conjuring, Insidious Chapter 2, Insidious Chapter 3, Annabelle. He did the score for the Vatican Tapes. He did this.
Your favorite film.
He did the score for The Conjuring 2. He did the score for Insidious: The Last Key. He did the score for The Prodigy. And he did the score only for the trench sequence of Aquaman.
Wow.
So, pretty good. Great guy. I think he deserves to be in the Amon Hall of Fame.
Sure. Why not?
All right, we'll get him on the show and induct him.
Well, so weird shit starts happening at fucking Rose Byrne and Patrick Wilson's house. Their baby, little Callie, is constantly being threatened.
Poor little Callie.
Poor Callie. And Patrick Wilson slowly starts to turn eviler and very evil indeed over
Until
the
he
course
just
of
goes
the movie.
fucking full Joker by the end.
Oh yeah, he becomes
Wild.
the Joker for sure.
But and then meanwhile we have our ghost hunters who were in the first one, Lee Winnell and the other guy, and they've returned for comic relief, and they have a subplot where they're trying to make contact with the ghost of Lin Shaye, and they also are trying to enlist the help of one of Lin Shaye's colleagues, who is, you know, poor man's Lin Shaye, who has his gimmick is instead of the gas mask, he talks to demons with his dice, which I like. That was fun.
Yeah,
very cool. And God bless James Wan and Lee Winnell. They always come up with these unique little devices that I haven't seen before in these horror movies. I appreciate that. Maybe they're just ripping something else off that I haven't seen, but just the idea of this guy who's just got these alphabet dice and he just keeps throwing them and seeing messages in them.
That was fun.
I enjoyed that quite a bit.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
It's like spooky Yahtzee kind of.
Yeah. But I don't know. I just did not feel like this movie was taking itself very seriously, which is fine, I guess. But it kind of reminded me of like an Adam Sandler movie where it was just like, here's our friends, and we're just gonna have a great time making this movie, and we're gonna get paid, and all our friends are here.
Yeah, I mean, it has the feeling of like, it seems like everybody's having a good time making it.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
And that's what I always liked about this movie. It looks like everybody, especially Patrick Wilson, is having the time of their life in this movie. And I just wish I were having the time of my life watching it.
Dude, same.
Because it just seems like more fun to be on the set than to watch the movie.
Oh, I found it super fun.
It's just, I don't know. It's been interesting to revisit some of Wan's films after, the masterpiece that is Malignant.
After he earned your respect, you just wouldn't believe me that he was a genius. You had to see it for yourself.
He's not a genius, but I like a lot of the elements of craft that he uses. I mean, like, there's some spooky shots in this movie. He knows how to move a camera, but it's not scary. And it tries so hard to make you think it's scary. Like, it just gets really fucking, it just gets loud. That's it.
Yes.
Like, I bet if you watch this movie without the sound on, it wouldn't do anything for you.
It gets very loud indeed, and that's it's a jump scare movie. Like, more so than the first Insidious. This movie is all about the jump scares and being afraid that there's going to be a jump scare. There's not a lot of dread for me. There's not a lot of suspense. I'm not ever in a situation where I'm like, oh, I don't want to be here. I'm just like, oh, when's the piano sting? When are they going to throw the piano down the stairs? I'm bracing for it.
And then when you get that, he thinks that you need quote unquote comic relief, and then we're stuck with those two fuckheads, Specs and Tucker. Is that their names? Like, I hate nothing more in a movie. I should tone down my anger a little bit here. Something I really dislike in horror movies is that, like, when they think they're too scary and that you're going to need comic relief, you're going to need somebody to come in and hold your hand. And I think this movie might have actually creeped me out a lot more if they just cut all of that shit with those two out and sustained the mood of everything else.
I don't like characters like that, but I don't find these two that annoying. And I actually don't even think there's that much comic relief with them. I mean, there are some moments that I could do without, like a moment with one of them right towards the end where he like crashes through the wall. I don't really think that's particularly spoiler
shit.
That was stupid. But I mean, for the most part, I find them inoffensive. To back it up, like a topic or so though, like, I mean, yeah, it's definitely a loud movie, and it definitely like gets by on just startling you rather than scaring you. But also, I think it works on a visual level too. I think you could absolutely turn it off, and this movie is still disorienting, unsettling. Like, there's so many weird moments of, you know, shit walking by in the background, or like you turn around and somebody's there who wasn't there before. There's lots of good stuff like that in this, and I think both parts work. Like, I think the visuals work, and also it's fucking smacking you in the face with the piano falling down the stairs on a regular basis too, which amps up the moments that I think would be scary on a visual level for me anyways. All I know is I fucking white knuckled it through this movie the first time I saw it, and I was struggling with some anxiety issues at the time, so I'm sure that contributed. I mean, it didn't like terrify me this time around, but it was still definitely startling and unsettling and fun for me.
One of my favorite things, speaking of the piano falling down the stairs, because it's in the first Insidious, and then we see it again in this movie for reasons that we'll probably get into in the spoiler room. But there's that jump scare where there's the ghost demon guy behind the crib when Rose Byrne goes in to take a look. Yeah. And it's really interesting to me how they time the music stinger for that, because it's not as soon as you see them. It's like they figured, all right, we're going to put this on the screen and we're going to make a guess about how long it's going to take you to see the guy and for your brain to process there's a guy there. And we're going to time the cue with that. And it works. It's really effective. And I don't know how they did that. It's amazing. Using psychology. But I mean, this is fun, you know. It's a fun movie. Everybody's having a good time, I guess. You know, what can you say about it? I don't find the comic relief guys, for what this movie's trying to be, I don't mind the comic relief guys. I didn't mind them in Insidious Chapter 1 either. But I mean, I totally understand why you wouldn't like them. The thing is, it's like whenever you have a comic relief characters, I don't like the idea of a comic relief character, to be honest. Like, I think probably the scenes of them doing the ghost hunting and the Conjuring with two very serious characters are probably as funny as the scenes of these comic relief guys doing ghost hunting, just because you put them in a funny situation and, you know, I don't know, humor comes out of the character, like realistic characters and how they relate to each other, I think, better than it does being like, oh, look, here's Jar Jar Binks. He's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, there are some just straight up jokes written for these characters, and they don't feel natural, and they're not funny to me. It's inoffensive, I think is the word Patrick used to describe them, but unnecessary still. I guess that's where I fall, you know,
I think of like Han Solo when I think of comic relief, because Han Solo is not a comic relief character, but he's fucking hilarious just in the way he sees the world and relates to the people around him. You know, he's a serious guy.
But yeah, the comic relief characters, and
they should put Harrison Ford in this movie.
Sure. And Barbara Hershey and the psychic who should be played by Harrison Ford all end up being led. Harrison Ford in this movie would be amazing.
I want to see him shooting dice like that.
Yeah. The dice lead them to go to the hospital where Barbara Hershey used to work, and they end up being sort of led by sort of like inconclusive means that were not clear to me why and how they ended up going to this particular room, but they end up finding out that what's going on is somehow connected to this strange patient named Parker Crane, who Barbara Hershey treated when she was a Jocelyn Donahue back in the day.
Yeah.
And Josh,
when she was in her Jocelyn Donahue era.
Yeah. And Josh had some strange connection to Parker Crane. He thought something was a little off with Parker Crane, but he didn't know what. And then Parker Crane died.
Parker Crane died. Or did he?
Yeah. We're told he died.
That gets into scary stories to tell in the dark territory, because where you have the scene where he's on the elevator and then she's like, "Hey, why is Parker out of his room?" And they're like, "Parker died 2 days ago. It was horrible."
Jumped off the building or something.
Like that's your little scary story to tell in the dark moment.
Yeah. I feel like that pretty much tees us up for the spoiler room, doesn't it?
That tees us up for the spoiler room, I think.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Because there are some twists and turns, but that's why we have a spoiler room.
So who wants to review it first? Who wants to say whether they would view it, cue it, or screw it?
I'll do it. All
right, go for it.
I will give it a cue it. As much as I love James Wan and I love Insidious, this just is not half the movie that Insidious is to me. God bless everybody. They're having a great time. It's fun to watch. There are some ideas too. There are 2 ideas, which we will talk about in the spoiler room, that I really, really like. Maybe 3 if you count the dice, that are worth your time spent with this movie. But, you're not missing much, I think, if you watch the first Insidious and you don't keep up with the rest of the franchise. It's not Saw, where the returns only get exponentially greater the more sequels you watch. Watch the first Insidious and call it good. Cue it. Steven.
I'll give it a low cue it. I mean, yeah, it's not the first Insidious by any means. It's a very convoluted, confused movie at times, but that's not to say I didn't have some fun with it. I enjoyed the visuals. There were a couple of good spooky moments in it, some really great and fun performances. I mean, I think Barbara Hershey and Lynn Shay are wonderful. Patrick Wilson, it's just such a treat to see him go so fucking over the top by the end of this movie. He's having the most fun of anyone, for sure. Mm-hmm. But, it's a jump scare movie, and that's just not really my bag at the end of the day. So, low cue it from me. Patrick, I think I can suspect where you're going to go with this, but let's hear it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a view it. I guess, if we're going to, like, kind of qualify it, maybe a low view it. I think it was not quite as fun and crazy and scary as I remembered it being, but I still had a damn good time with it. It's a little loosey-goosey. The plot doesn't quite make sense at various points, but it's a blast. It's just James Wan going pretty crazy, and as Chris pointed out before, seemingly just having fun with a lot of people who he likes to collaborate with. So it's a pleasure to watch.
A pleasure to watch. I want to see that on the Blu-ray.
A pleasure to watch. And it includes Patrick Wilson going full dun dun dun. Before we go down to the spoiler room, as usual, we will encourage you to go give us a follow, give us a like on your social media platform of choice. We are AmonCast. That's EHMON Cast on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. If you haven't already, go rate us and write a review for us on your podcast provider of choice. We always love to get that feedback, of course, and it helps more people find the show if we have more folks out there telling the world how great we are. Hopefully, don't tell the world that we're mediocre or bad, because we don't need that. We don't need that energy. What's the other thing I'm supposed to tell them to do? Oh, go to our website, everyhorrormovieonnetflix.com, where you can see a list of every goddamn movie we've ever watched.
Should they go to the website?
Oh, yeah. Should we?
It's going to be fixed. It'll be fixed soon. Don't worry.
So, next year? Actually, next year's pretty soon.
Yeah.
The website is like Patrick Wilson's body in The Conjuring or in Insidious Chapter 2.
Yeah, it's the dead soul is killing the live flesh of the website. But yeah, if you go there, you can probably maybe access a list of every movie we've ever watched, and hopefully still link to our merch store as well. All right, should we head down the stairs and through that bright red door into the basement?
Yep, absolutely, always.
Let's do it.
All right, drop that piano down the stairs and let's go.
All right.
All right, we have gone down to the basement. We have gone into the further. Everything is very blue now. There's a lot of fog everywhere, and we are ready to probe the astral plane to share every spoiler from Insidious Chapter 2 with you.
You know, it's a common misconception that the further is blue. The further is actually colorless. The further is pitch black. It's just that you go into the further with a glowing blue lantern.
Are you reading like the Wikipedia entry on the further?
No, I'm just recalling on my photographic memory of the further, because they have the bright blue lanterns.
But you think the lantern is blue, like there's not something naturally about the pigmentation of the further that causes the lantern to appear blue.
Right.
It's all an illusion, man. Light's just an illusion.
It's like the Matrix.
I really like the further, and I like the shots of it more in this movie than in the first one, actually. I just love the kind of dead zone, like pitch black with a giant house and, you know, like Hammer horror fog rolling all over the place and spooky people moving around in the darkness. It's great stuff.
Scary.
And it's so simple.
It's scary. I don't want to be dead in the further.
Yeah.
It's so simple and such a cheap effect, but done brilliantly. And I think that's how James Wan has been one reason he's been able to make these like $5-10 million movies that make $200 million at the box office. Very inventive.
What is
guy.
the reason?
I mean, he I don't want to say he cuts corners, but he finds like really cheap, simple setups for his scares.
Oh yeah.
So he's able to keep things on a really small scale and make an even bigger return when the thing becomes a hit.
But yeah, I mean, everything looks great. I mean, talk about giallo. Like, there's fucking colored, like, bright primary colors everywhere in this motherfucker, and I love it.
Oh my god, is it Barbara Hershey's house that has the single red window?
Yeah.
I fucking love that.
Yeah.
And it gets so much use, too. There's so many shots where, like, you see the red light coming down the staircase. It's fantastic. I don't know why you would place something like that in your house if you're... You know, you've had experiences with the supernatural and you're spooked all the time, but it worked for me.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks great.
I'm going to put a red porch light lantern on my house when I have a house.
Oh, like Put-in Bay to keep the mayflies away, right?
Yeah, to keep the mayflies away.
Steven actually kind of looks like he's in a scene from Insidious right now, actually. He's got a green light in his room, and it looks like there's kind of a red backlight. It looks very Insidious.
Is it kaleidoscopic, though?
It's kaleidoscopic for sure.
It looks like if you turn your camera around, we would see like a Steven clone in a green tank of fluid trying to get out, or maybe the original Steven trying to get out, and you're the clone
in Darth Maul makeup.
Yeah.
Well, the reality is you'll never know because I'm never turning this camera around. What lurks behind? Leave it up to your imagination.
Or it's just a Christmas tree, and you're putting decorations up early.
We don't put Christmas trees up in my household.
Well, since Steven's not going to spoil for us what's in his room, we might as well spoil what happens in Insidious Chapter 2. It turns out, and this is one of the things that bugs me about this movie a little bit that I had forgotten about. It turns out that the black-clad bride that's been haunting Patrick Wilson all these years, who we have assumed is a female-bodied person, is in fact Parker Crane. Which, I mean, fine, I guess, but plays into some sort of regressive tropes, I think.
Well, yeah, when he was a child, his mother wanted a girl, right? Yeah. So he's dressed as a girl. Looks a little bit like Annabelle from behind in a couple of shots.
Yeah,
which I found kind of interesting.
Pigtails, yeah. Yeah, his mother like abused him, and then he grew up to be a serial killer who wears a dress and puts on makeup to kill people.
And don't forget, he was in the hospital because he tried to castrate himself.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean...
It's very sleepaway camp, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't seen Sleepaway Camp, but I'll say, yeah, I agree.
Well, now you know the ending of Sleepaway Camp.
Oh, okay. Spoiler alert. All right.
It's
well,
very, the crying game.
we're in the spoiler room, so I can't complain too much about spoilers. Yeah, I mean, you know, there's nothing. I don't think there's anything mean spirited or necessarily problematic about this stuff, but it does kind of fit into a problematic legacy of you know, of how gender nonconformity has been depicted in horror movies.
Yeah, as being just inherently evil and fucked up. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's like, I'll spoil another movie.
Suspicious at best.
Yeah, it weirdly did not, you know, I was expecting to feel at least slightly offended during this movie, and I really wasn't, though. I don't know what it was about it. I mean, maybe it's just that, like, I didn't take anything in this movie very seriously or put too much thought into it. I don't know. It really toes that line, though.
I think some of it is that he does couch that whole twist and the character of the mother in just this air of like very soapy, like kind of ridiculousness. Like every line that the mother says, especially when you get to like the scene where it's flashing back to her abusing him as a kid and screaming at him, like it's played so far over the top. And I feel like he's telling you like, yes, this is absurd and over the top, and you're supposed to be there with me, you know. And I think it just it cues you in to not take it too seriously, which I think. And also,
helps. none of it really seems to indicate Parker Crane has a gender identity of any sort. Like it's not about him trying to express his gender identity. It's about just him being manipulated by an abusive mother who wants him to be a girl and kill people. Mm-hmm. That's how I read it anyway.
Yeah.
There's another moment in this movie that, like, I expected to feel more problematic than it did. So as much as I hate Specs and Tucker, I totally ship those two. Like, I felt from the beginning of this movie, I was like, these guys are in love with each other and they don't know it. And there is a little moment where Specs puts his hand on Tucker's leg and doesn't let go, and Tucker just kind of gives him like a really suspicious look with his eyes, and I was like, oh my god, this is like the closest I've ever seen a movie to be on the verge of gay panic. But it doesn't go there. It just cuts away, and it ends up just being kind of a sweet little moment.
Well, there is also a joke later where like one of them wakes up and the other one is on top of him, and that's also it's not played like again, it's not played like super high for like LOL gay, you know, but it had that same kind of air to it where I was like, really? Do we need a joke about how it's awkward and weird that these guys they're two men and they're close to each other, you know? I don't know.
Another Adam Sandler connection there.
Yeah, really.
Was that the point, or was the point just that Specs was trapped because he couldn't get up underneath Tucker's body?
I don't know. I've watched it twice.
I thought that's how I read it, but
I've watched it twice in the last 2 days, and I feel both times I felt like that was at least an element of what you were supposed to be taking from that scene, but that was just my read.
Well, let's get Lee Winnell on the show, and cancel him.
But yeah, so we figure all that out, and what's the other big spoiler that I'm trying to think of right now? Patrick Wilson loses his shit.
Yeah, and I mean, I probably won't be alone in saying the best scene of the movie is when Patrick Wilson's confronting the dice man.
Oh my god, yes.
Oh,
amazing.
Jesus, yes.
I went a whole movie like
the
that.
The makeup artist who did his makeup for this movie is my fucking hero. Like, he just gets like so heavily contoured and like such heavy lines drawn into his face, and it gets progressively more like exaggerated as the movie goes on, and I fucking love it.
Yeah, because he's so like his soul is trapped in the further, right? Am I understanding this correctly?
Yeah.
And his body is inhabited by
Parker Crane,
a ghoul, and he's basically decomposing.
Yeah.
For most of the movie, it's a little like the dead friend in American Werewolf in London, though not nearly as graphic.
The dead soul is killing the live flesh.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
But there's this great scene where the psychic guy is knows that this guy is possessed by this ghost and is trying to sedate him so he can do a ritual. So he comes over and they have a cup of coffee, and it's very civil. And, there's a lot, that's great dramatic tension, because we know that the psychic knows that Patrick Wilson is a demon. Patrick Wilson doesn't really know that this guy's on to him, and he's playing everything off like Patrick Wilson. And then there comes to a point where Patrick Wilson comes up to him, and he's, got his hand behind his back, and he's like, "What do you got behind your back?" And he's like, "Why don't you ask your dice?"
That was
my favorite line of the movie.
Screaming out loud.
And this is also the point in the movie where Patrick Wilson is just doing a Joker grin after every sentence that he says, like this big toothy grin, and it's just so delightful.
And he does ask his dice, which I thought was funny, how he followed through with it, and he does it right in front of him. And I was really pleased too, because there's a baseball bat, for no reason at all, there's a baseball bat on the china cabinet where this guy's throwing the dice. And I'm like, that is Chekhov's baseball bat. I'm going to be really upset if Patrick Wilson doesn't get hit by this bat.
Somebody's got to say swing away by the end of this movie. Yeah. That's what I was hoping for.
It shows up earlier in the movie, though, remember? Because he's talking to Rose Byrne and trying to downplay what's going on. And then he's like, I'm going to take care of this. And he walks, the shot is of the entryway to their living room, and he walks through the entryway. You see him walk past, then he walks back through with the bat, and he's like, I'm gonna go take care of this. And it's like, yeah, go beat up the ghost, dude.
Something else I really liked is they end up in the further, and they're trying to they're basically trying to go back and communicate with the young Patrick Wilson for some reason. They're trying to find, I think, the ghost mom, Parker Crane's mom's spirit in the further. They're trying to find her, right?
I think so. But for some contrived reason, they end up at the house from the first Insidious while the events of the first Insidious are taking place. And it's like a Back to the Future Part 2 thing, where we find out that the unexplained knocking at the door that they experienced in the first Insidious was Patrick Wilson knocking on the door to try to get in the house in Insidious 2.
Oh, is that in the first Insidious?
Really enjoyed that. Oh yeah, all that whole scene.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's been too long since I've seen
it plays out, and I remember that's all how it plays out. There's knocks on the door, and they go down, there's no one there, and then they come back, and then the burglar alarm goes off, and the door's open, and now we see how that all played out from the ghost point of view. And I thought that was a good idea, and I thought that would be
But Patrick Wilson is crazy in that scene.
No.
When the burglar alarm goes off, that's crazy. That's Parker Crane in Patrick Wilson's body.
No.
Yeah.
No, I don't know what you're talking about, because they're in the further with the real Patrick Wilson, and then they go up to the Insidious house with the Insidious Part 1 Patrick Wilson. Meanwhile, Parker Crane Patrick Wilson is in the Insidious 2 house trying to murder his family.
Oh, so there's 3 separate... I did not parse this. There's 3 separate Patrick Wilsons in this movie, then?
4 if you count the boy.
Wow.
Just because... But they only go to the Insidious house in a brief moment.
Wait, what do you mean by the Insidious house? Do you mean the original house they're in Insidious 1? The one they move out of? Oh.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Wait, what are they doing there, then?
I forget what brought them there.
This whole thing.
But they're there for some reason, and they're trying to get into the house, and they're screaming at the family.
Oh.
And then you see the events of Insidious 1 happening inside the house.
Oh.
But because there's this moment where the door gets knocked down.
I thought that was still in the continuity of Chapter 2 with Parker Crane and Patrick Wilson's body.
No, because that's where you see the guy behind the crib, which is from Insidious 1.
Right. Okay, yeah. That's right. Okay, yeah, he's in the first one. Okay, I was going to say, I was thinking about how it didn't make any sense, who that guy even was. That's right. Okay, he's from the first one. Huh. Weird. Yeah. I might have to watch this a third time.
You might have to,
Fuck.
yeah. So that's
all right. Sorry,
it's kind of a clever idea for them to say, okay, we're making Insidious Chapter 2. Well, what if it was mostly from the ghost point of view, or mostly from the further? Because this is there's much more further in this movie than there was in Insidious 1. So it's kind of well, what if it's a ghost story, but from the point of view of the ghosts, which is kind of what it is.
I'm trying to think where we go next from here.
I mean, they find the mama ghost, and Lin Shaye beats her with a rocking horse, and it lifts the curse.
Yeah, I mean, there's like some very cool like cross-cutting between time periods and further in real life. And you know, we realized that when Josh was little and kind of like creepily pointed to this door to show where the person who was tormenting him was, he was actually pointing to like future Patrick Wilson and Lin Shaye and would-be Harrison Ford going through a door to go down to the basement to solve this whole situation. So I mean, it's cute, it's fun the way these kind of timelines and realities intersect towards the end of this film. And in the real world, crazy ass Patrick Wilson is going full like fucking Jack Torrance, like trying to beat down the basement door with a fire extinguisher and being honestly pretty fucking terrifying as he like menaces his wife and kids.
Yeah, I also thought of The Shining during that sequence.
Yeah, it's got big shining energy.
Well, they're in a pantry for one thing, like, aren't they?
I thought that was in the base. No, they're in the laundry room.
Oh, they're in the laundry room. Okay, but it looks a little bit like a pantry.
Yeah.
It's got the shelves. It's got, you know, your pantry products in it. Yeah, that's all good stuff. You know what? I cried a little bit watching this movie. Maybe because I'm a sap.
What did you cry at?
But it had a dog food moment for me.
And what was that?
The song?
Yeah, the song. Oh my god,
that got me the second time around too. The first time I thought it was sort of stupid, and then I was like, oh.
Well, doesn't she say like she knows it's really him because nobody else could play it that badly or something?
Yeah,
it's cute. It's a cute moment.
But because Rose Byrne's been haunted by a ghost playing the piano in her house the whole movie, and then she eventually figures out that, oh wait, it's playing like the song that I composed or something. And
one of her like clues that Patrick Wilson is truly not himself is when he doesn't recognize the song that she wrote for him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a song that she wrote for him and that's a detail from the first Insidious.
Oh my god, that's
she
right.
was like a songwriter, but it wasn't really developed very much. And so then at the end, Patrick Wilson comes back to his body, and he's like, "I tried playing the song for you."
And Rose Byrne is having a great fucking acting moment, just like absolutely not trusting that this is her husband back in his body.
Yeah, that was great. She was ready to kill him. Yeah. She was ready to kill her husband.
And then he's like, I tried playing the song. And that's when she realizes it actually is him.
Oh my God. Just my heart melted.
Very cute. Very cute.
Very cute. And then that's where you get, you know, we can't have a tender moment like that for very long before, you know, Tucker comes in and gives his Marvel moment where he sucks all the sincerity out of the scene with a throwaway joke to make the moms laugh.
To make the moms laugh.
Yeah, can't forget about the moms.
I don't really know if that has anything to do with moms, but okay. But yeah, then Patrick Wilson, Ty Simpkins, father and son, get their memories zapped again so that they forget all this and forget their abilities all over again. And then we have a really weird epilogue where Specs and Tucker and Lin Shaye go to a new house to investigate a new thing that, from what I can tell, this thread does not get picked up in Insidious 3 or 4.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. But the gimmick is that the two of them will continue to investigate paranormal stuff, and now Lin Shaye is with them, but as a ghost.
Yeah, I found it a really weird and kind of anticlimactic ending because we see her react to something in the corner of this house that they're investigating, but we don't see what it is, and I don't know. That was a very strange moment to me, especially in a movie that isn't afraid to like show you some shit. It was really weird that she was reacting so strongly to just like a random shadow in a house where we don't know any of the people there. It just felt very tacked on and inconsequential to me.
Well, inconsequential for sure. I didn't mind the scene, but have you seen Insidious Chapter 3? Well, in Insidious Chapter 3, and I haven't seen The Last Key, but I think it's the same. In Insidious Chapter 3, it's those parent ghost hunters and Lin Shaye, but it's a prequel, so Lin Shaye's still alive, and it takes place before the events of the first Insidious. So I think they had an idea of where the franchise could go after Insidious Chapter 2, but they decided for whatever reason that they didn't want to have Lin Shaye be a ghost.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I might watch the other two at some point. I don't feel high enthusiasm for it. I mean, I love Lynn Shay, but obviously I could kind of take or leave Specs and Tucker. And you gotta have Ty Simpkins, you gotta have Rose Byrne, you gotta have Patrick Wilson. It's just not Insidious without them.
It's not the same without them. Although Insidious Chapter 3 is the directorial debut of the new Australian master, Lee Winnell.
Oh, really?
Did not know that.
Isn't James Wan Australian too?
Yeah.
I learned that from some tweet that you put out recently, and I had no idea.
Yep.
Thank you for clearing that up, because that was actually a question I had going into this episode that I forgot to pose. I wondered, like, how the hell do these guys know each other? They've done so much
From film
together
school.
over the years. Oh, really? Okay.
They're both Australian, and I think they met in film school. And they did Saw together as a short, and then they got financing to do Saw as a big movie. And that was all history from there.
Well, that's Insidious Chapter 2. That's Insipid Chapter Poo.
Damn straight.
So what are we watching next time, Steven?
Yeah, overall, not a pretty low entry in the James Wan canon, I would say, on my ranking. I don't think I even like it as much as The Conjuring. To be
Really?
honest.
I like it more than The Conjuring.
Yeah.
It's just fun. It's just a big, fun, silly roller coaster ride, and I like
Yes,
those.
it is. It's like the ride at the fair, the spooky ride that I was always too afraid to go on, even though I love spooks as a kid. And then one day I went on it. My dad took me on it, and the first time a skeleton jumped out of the dark, I put my hands over my eyes, and I kept them there for the rest of the ride. That's Insidious Chapter.
Did you watch this movie with your hands over your eyes?
No, I
Okay,
didn't.
good.
But yeah, but I understand why it would have that effect on somebody in the theater.
Yeah.
In a theater, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big sound system and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are we watching next time, Steven?
Oh my god, you guys. So I I decided we should do a little course correction, because we've done two really big, well-known movies. And we're here to watch primarily, I think, to watch shit that people maybe haven't heard of, maybe have thrown in their queue, whatever, and let them know whether or not they should spend their time on it. So I'm going to tell you why I chose this movie, and then I'm going to tell you what I just learned about it, and it's going to blow your fucking minds.
Ooh.
Okay, so we are going to watch, in 2 weeks, Roger Corman Presents Splatter. I'll read you the synopsis. After committing suicide, a washed-up rocker returns from the grave to torment the 5 people who betrayed him in life.
Oh, that sounds
Cast
fun.
featuring Tony Todd, Stuart Penkin,
yes.
and, as the washed-up rocker himself, Corey Feldman.
Oh my god.
Oh, wow.
But there's more. So, I had never heard of this before. It showed up in the horror movie queue. It turns out this film is only 29 minutes. It was originally a 3-part web series made for Netflix in 2009, directed by Joe Dante, and it's a choose-your-own-adventure.
Oh.
What?
So we're breaking a lot of ground with this one, guys.
We're
pretty
gonna
stoked.
we're gonna have 3 completely different experiences.
I hope so.
Wait, so are there only 29 minutes of footage?
Yeah, that's it.
Huh.
It was like 3 9 or 10 minute shorts initially, and now it's all been bundled together in one special package.
Oh, gotcha. So
I
we'll
don't
be
know if
watching
I
all
don't know
the
if I can find the time.
So we're gonna see all the endings then in that 29 minutes.
I don't know. I mean, this is 2009. This is like very pre-Bandersnatch,
Bandersnatch,
so
this
I have
ain't.
no idea what this is going to be like.
Wow.
I'm kind of excited.
I'm gonna get killed in the first 5 minutes, and I'm gonna review it on the basis of that.
Well, I'm really looking forward to having that experience with you guys in a couple of weeks. I think it's going to be a hoot.
Can't wait. David
right.
Cage presents Roger Corman presents Splatter.
Oh my god, David Cage.
All right.
What a man.
Well, we'll be there. We'll be choosing our own adventure. You can choose your adventure along with us in 2 weeks for every horror movie on Netflix. I'm Patrick,
I'm Chris.
I'm Steven.
and we will see you next time.